Well, to get a good translation and understanding and interpretation of the Bible, you have to follow a very, very good routine of careful consideration, utilizing your reading skills. Nothing unusual. The better reading skills you have, and the more time you spend, the more chances you are of having a good interpretation and proving out the Bible for what it says and not for what you have thought it says by making mistakes. So we have suggested routines and resources to arrive at the normative meaning of the Bible of a passage, a chapter in the Bible, and so on. Here we go. We're at B. Arrive at a translation in 21st century English. Well, why that? Well, unless you're really, really adept at other languages out of the century, and it's a really good translation. But then when you communicate that archaic language like King James English in the 1600s, other people won't understand it. So it does better. Now, you might want to make some modifications in the 21st century English translation of a passage or chapter of the Bible which best reflects the original text by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic. How do you know about the original text? Lots of resources. A lot of times you can use an interlinear. I've used 7 translations, not the least of which is New American Standard, Young's Literal Translation, New King James, Holman Christian Standard Bible, American Standard Version, King James Version, and IV. And then I have an interlinear and a complete biblical library interlinear. So I can check out, see what we do here? Check out what you're looking at. Hebrews 5:14. Full grown but is the solid food. On account of the practice, the senses having been trained, now you put this together in proper English word order, which starts with subject, verb, and whatever, and having the distinguishing good, both good and evil. Now, how do you do that? Well, but solid foods for the mature who practice, who come because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Subject, verb, and object. Sorry about that. Okay. So you look at that and take a look at the Young's Literal Translation. And a perfect man, perhaps the word perfect is better off full grown instead of perfect, because there's no perfect man around. So you have to fix that. Is the strong food, but because of the use of having the senses exercised into the discernment of both good and evil. So you have to, okay, I like New King James Version, but solid food belongs to those who are of full age, that is, those who by reason, now that is italics. That's a clarification in English. I'm glad they put it in italics. Those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. NIV, what does that say? Anyone who lives on let's see. But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. You read a couple of these, I get a good idea of that. I kind of like the New King James Version here. King James Version, but strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Kind of figure that out. But modern English, I like New King James Version. But solid food belongs to those who are of full age, that is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Practice, practice, practice. That's all it's really saying. See? So, compare a passage, a chapter of the Bible, in the interlinear Bible, which we just did, of the original language. There are lots of interlinears you can get online, including those verses with variant problems. In other words, original manuscripts have been changed as we go through the years. And I've got a book on that by Comfort. That's a good one. And it'll tell you which is the best. A lot of times things come later and you can tell that somebody's altered it. So, compare a passage, a chapter of the Bible, and the interlinear Bible of the original language, including those verses with variant problems, which you have already resolved, with at least 7 versions, translations in English, in order to select the version as modified by you, put it in brackets, which best reflects the original text in 21st century English by following the normative rules of language, context, and logic. Make your own modifications in brackets to comply with those rules of interpretation. Each of the 7+ versions you choose to use have been translated in largely in accordance with the normative rules, avoiding paraphrases, substituted words, and restructuring sentences. Some of those versions have that, whenever linguistically possible in the English language. Now we saw, for example, that's in italics for Hebrews 5:14. And NASB doesn't have any italics. But solid food is for the mature, who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good and evil. So I would go with the NASB, but both are very good. Young's literal translation, and of perfect men, they're not perfect. Mature is the strong food. I don't like the word strong. Solid, better idea. Solid food is for the mature. The solid food is for full-grown men. Okay. Even, as italic, see? So you work your best to get the best English version that you can explain to people who understand what language you're using. You can't use King James English and expect other people to have a growing knowledge of it if they don't study that particular version. So many versions are available online. The versions you choose to compare with the interlinear should include a number of versions which are noted for the literal translation, and a number that attempt to be faithful to the word order of the original text, such as the YLTAV and King James Version, which we looked at, which do both. So you have a smattering of this stuff, and you come up with an understanding in English that you understand to explain to somebody else. These 3 versions and others have archaic words which need to be corrected to 21st century English by consulting an archaic English dictionary available online and or comparing them to 21st century English versions. Takes a little time. Archaic words often have significantly different meanings than what the same word means in today's English. Archaic means an older word that isn't used regularly by the meaning that was used in the 16th century. Also, trustworthy are the following versions in 21st century English. We've looked at NASB, New King James Version, Holman Standard, NIV. Occasionally, the Septuagint, Greek Old Testament, might be needed since it is often quoted in the New Testament. It is available online in PDF format. Select the most accurate version, translation, as modified by you, like in brackets, see what I have brackets? Or off to the side, or put your own understanding of the verse underneath. From amongst those 7+ versions, translations that you have chosen, add in brackets your corrections in accordance with your personal study of the original language manuscript. So the version, translation you select, and modify from the group of versions you are comparing to the interlinear Bible original text to represent a translation in English of the original text of each verse should A. reflect the proper meaning of each word in modern 21st century English that best fits the context of that verse. Note that the interlinear Bible defines each word as to its particular part of speech, tense, number, gender, mood, voice, person, stem, and so on, to aid in your understanding, interpretation, and decision. And the 7 or more versions of the Bible and Hebrew, Greek, and Archaic English dictionaries will aid as well. Hebrew Greek dictionaries offer a number of possible meanings which may or may not agree with the interlinear Bible's rendering of the word in English. And then you compare your translation. Take care to note differences amongst the versions and dictionaries you are using and determine the best meaning for the context. And then provide your commentary underneath. Refer to grammar books, some of which usually come with the interlinear Bible to explain the parts of speech as needed. You can take a look at that. See these notations here. Adjective, genitive case, plural, masculine. Now you look up with genitive. You have Greek books. I mean the grammar books. Sorry, grammar books like I have on this interlinear thing. Look down the list here. Study helps, topics, word studies, commentaries. In any case, you'll find out what that means. Genitive case. Take a look at the dictionary. Grammatical forms, and so on. So you have some research. Now, take care to note differences amongst the versions, dictionaries you're using, and determine the best meaning for the context. Refer to grammar books, some of which usually come with the interlinear Bible to explain the parts of speech as needed. Other Greek, Hebrew grammar books are available online or in bookstores. Keep the word order of the original language as far as possible within a framework, because the emphasis a lot of times in Hebrew and Greek is in the beginning. They change the word order from what English is, which is subject, verb, object, because they want to emphasize something. So keep the word order of the original language as far as possible within the framework of the normative rules of 21st century American English grammar in order to maintain the emphasis points in the context established in the original text. The Young's literal translation as compared to the NASB and New King James Version are very useful in this task. Let's just double check on that. See. But solid food is for the mature who, because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Young's literal. And of perfect men, or of mature men, is the solid food who, because of the use of that, are having the senses exercised unto the discernment both of good and evil. So the word order is a little different. But if he's emphasizing here, translator, and in the original text, that the most important thing is a mature man is the one who can discern better than a less mature man. See how that works? So he's emphasizing that. Now, within the framework of normative rules of 21st century American English, you keep the word order as far as possible in order to maintain the emphasis points, the original word order, of the context established in the original text. The Young's literal translation, as compared to NASB and New King James Version, are very useful in this task. Authorized Version, King James Version, are often helpful as well. Sentences in 21st century English may at times be awkward in order to be accurate and best represent the original text. But they must not violate the rules of 21st century English grammar, otherwise people get confused. Subject, word, and object. Now there's some little inserts you can put in there to emphasize in the middle of a 21st century English sentence and make the